Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome everybody to the 2020 Swiss Re Media Day. My name is Baertschi and it is my pleasure to be your host for today. The topic that we picked for today is technology in the insurance industry, technology at Swiss Re. And we have a great lineup of speakers for you. We made some last minute changes to some of the topics in the lineup just to keep it interesting for you. But we trust you will enjoy the next 2 hours and we look forward to spending the time with you here. Thank you for being here. I'd like to start with a little bit of context. So clearly the big story in 2020 is COVID-19. And we all know the impact that this has had on us as individuals. And we have followed the world, as it has experienced this health and humanitarian crisis, also becoming an economic crisis. To put some figures to that, we're all very familiar with the devastating impact COVID-19 has had on the world, with almost 10 million confirmed cases globally and many more not tested and reported, and almost 500,000 deaths globally. Unfortunately, both of these figures will clearly continue to rise, and some countries continue to experience rapid increases in both. On the economic side, our experts at the Swiss Re Institute calculated that COVID-19 wiped out about 0.5% of the global GDP for every week of lockdown. Now, 0.5% doesn't sound so big, but if we take roughly $80 trillion of global GDP, we're looking at about $400 billion in economic production lost each week of lockdown. So why, in this environment, do we want to talk about technology? And the answer is there is a winner in the COVID crisis, and that is technology. So this crisis actually has caused a massive, rapid education of the global population about what tech can do. So personally, we're all familiar with, for example, how families are staying connected through various video chat apps. We go online a lot more for shopping. University courses are now running online. And companies like ours are running large international businesses in a virtual environment. As a specific Swiss Re example, we completed a very successful April 1 renewal across the world, and especially in Asia, with almost the entire team working from home. And that was the payoff of our investment into our own IT infrastructure, allowing our colleagues to access the tools that they needed. So tech got us through, tech has ensured continuity, and there is no way we're going back to the old normal. The interesting thing about the big win for tech is that for us at Swiss Re, it wasn't really a new invention or a gadget or a platform that came along. This was not a quantum leap. There was no new tech. Rather, it was the result of a long-term development that in total have positioned us at Swiss Re so well. And this idea of long-term investments, of harvesting the rewards of a long-term commitment will be a theme today. And going forward, we must not miss this opportunity to accelerate the massive momentum in digitization, in awareness, in expectations. We must put it to good use across the whole insurance value chain. So what you will hear today are just a few ways of how we're doing this here at Swiss Re. And let's talk a little bit about logistics of what's coming your way today. So first, we're very excited that Pravina Ladva will join us for our keynote on his approach to technology. Pravina is our newly appointed Group Digital Transformation Officer. And following that, we've split the program into 2 sections, each with 3 talks on specific projects in different areas of our business. And these will give you a snapshot of what we're doing and what's relevant for our clients. And of course, these projects are not an exhaustive list of all the things we're doing in tech. After the first 3 talks, we'll have a short break with Q&A, including Pravina. Then we'll go into the second sessions and do Q&A again at the end. A few logistical points on our platform here. Please be aware that we are recording the session and we'll make it available on the Swiss Re website after this. We will mute all of the participants. I did hear some church bells just very shortly ago, but they're now muted during the session here. And so if you want to ask a question in the Q&A, of course, you can go off mute or you can raise your hand in the button that you can type at the bottom in the chat as well. So many ways to get the questions over to us. Whether you want to use a camera or not, entirely up to you. It will be nice to see you during Q&A. And if you want to pin the people you want to see on the screen so the camera doesn't switch around, you can do so by right-clicking on the person you would like to pin and the option will appear. And then finally, at the end, we will send you a quick survey for feedback where you will have the chance to tell us what you think about the sessions and also help us shape the next media day. All right, so with that, let me introduce Pravina. Pravina will commence her new role as the Group Digital Transformation Officer on the 1st of July of this year. She originally joined Swiss Re in May 2017 as the Chief Technology and Operations Officer for our Life Capital business unit. And prior to that, Pravina established a successful career in the financial technology sector with responsibilities for strategy, delivery, and results. Most notably, from 2008 until 2017, Pravina worked in a variety of roles at Barclaycard, including COO Digital Marketplace and CIO Barclaycard Business Solutions. And during this time, she led B2B and B2B2C technology and change teams, driving agile transportation across Barclaycard. Welcome, Pravina.
Thank you. Thank you, Urs. And good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. So as Urs said, I'm the newly appointed Group Digital Transformation Officer. So new that actually start next week. So today is a very opportunity to be able to share with you some of our thoughts around our broader strategy. But with my new role, I'll be responsible for driving the transformation agenda, which will include innovation management, but also will include working with our strategic tech partnerships across all of our business units. But every transformation starts with people, and even tech transformation starts with people. So, and it's super important to us that the people are at the heart of the transformation we drive, working both collaboratively internally, but also externally with our strategic partners. And with that, I'm also pleased to say, the way we've organized ourselves at Swiss Re is to really harness and be the catalyst of that change. So under Annette Bronder's leadership, we have also appointed a Chief Technology Officer called Young Ran Kim and a Chief Data Officer called Ian Haycock. And as I said, it will be the three of us that will work together to really be the catalyst to take us forward on this transformation journey. I guess taking a step back and recognizing that the people element is really important. It's not, if you think about the insurance world and what we do, whether it's with data, with information, it's not really surprising that technology and automation and digitization is very much close to the heart of what we do at Swiss Re. So I'm very much looking forward to taking you through a high-level view of today. And each one of the presentations that will follow will give you a snapshot into some of the initiatives that are progressing really well.
Great, thank you, Pravina. And so let's go a little bit deeper here. What are the main drivers of digital transformation across the insurance industry?
Yeah, I think we will all recognize that we're in a period of massive digital change. It's totally technology is totally revolutionizing how we do business, and we can feel it in all walks of life. Even if you think about the new risks that are emerging, the new risks that are emerging in the insurance industry of self-driving cars, and the impacts of cybercrime, that really opens up new opportunities. But with any digital transformation comes a level of disruption. And we really see this disruption as opportunities for us. Now, I think there are 5 areas of digital disruption and transformation that are really relevant to the insurance industry. The first one is the rise of computational power. If you think about the connected home, the connected networks, and the sheer volume of how that's moved and the pace it's moved at, it's absolutely incredible. The second is the changing behaviors of consumers. We all reflect on our own personal buying habits over the last 10 years and just think about how that has changed. The third is the explosion of data. So if you take and this is further accelerated by the consumer behaving patterns and the computational power, that in itself gives rise to a third perspective of the availability of data and the game-changing technologies available in that space. Then encompassing that, oh, excuse me, is the fourth item, which is around digital marketplace, where you have data, where you have consumers, and where you have the speed that you can go at. You can definitely see new marketplaces appearing all the time. So to give you a real example is these days, it's yes, people will still go and buy insurance, but it's more likely they will buy a product when they are purchasing something else, like a camera, um, or more of a B2B engagement. So the embedded sale, the contextual sale becomes even more important. And finally, the growth of digital market players. There are more and more marketplaces that are coming to life that we would never have imagined that had existed before. And this, again, comes with competitors for us in the insurance industry. So I would say there are 5 mega trends that we're seeing in the insurance industry that creates disruption, but actually, from our perspective, is a real opportunity.
So let's stay on this topic of digital marketplaces for a little bit. And, there's been a lot of talk around this and growth of purely digital players. What's your take on whether insurtechs or big tech companies will get into the insurance space and even overtake some of the incumbents?
Do you know what? There's a lot of speculation around this topic, and I get asked that question quite often. And you can listen to the media, and I meet many of the insurtechs, and there's lots and lots of information. I guess I perhaps have a very provocative or what could be considered a controversial view on this. So I think insurtechs on their own aren't going to disrupt our business model. They're not going to take over the insurance world. But, and that's a big but, I think where they really have a part to play is in partnership. So I think it's the insurtechs partnering with organizations like ourselves that we're really going to see the winning path. And just to provide some statistics around that, 60% of insurtechs that are live at the moment, they are really working in a specific part of the value chain. So it tends to be in the distribution side, in the product development side, very much at the beginning of the value chain. Then 30% of the insurtechs tend to focus on the B2B business. So really taking away the business away from paper and digitizing it. And then the 10%, and the 10%, I guess we could say the 10% that's really disrupting the insurance industry. And those are the ones who've brought in new carriers and have, introduced new business models. So I would say partnership is the way forward. But I guess the thing I'm extremely proud of that even in with Swiss Re, we have our own unicorn. Our unicorn is called iptiQ, and it's our B2B2C white label platform. And Carl will later take us a bit more deeper into what that is. So there's a fintechs and insurtechs are one lens. The other lens people often talk to me about is the big industry tech giants. What are they going to do to our industry? And we've already seen them, make plays into payments, and I know that from my previous role, into warranties. But what we find is some of the barriers to entry are just too high. So insurance know-how, regulation. So again, the winning path there, I really think, is one of partnership with us. And that's really what our strategy is based on. Again, one of partnerships. But having said that, it doesn't mean we can just sit back and relax. We have really got to stay ahead of the curve and see these, what sometimes are perceived as threats, as opportunities. And that's why at Swiss Re, we really see, technology strategy as a core part of the business. They are part of the same thing. It's not something that we do on the side.
So you touch upon a number of very interesting topics, and we will go deeper into them a little bit later. Let's talk more about how technology can be this big enabler for us at Swiss Re. How do we best leverage it across all of our businesses?
No, and I think the key thing that jumps at me is around data. So as a world leader reinsurance, Swiss Re has always used data, whether it's around, the analysis part, it is the bread and butter of what we do. So, our vision is, and we're well on the path of doing it, of how to take us from being a leading risk knowledge company to be a tech and data empowered risk knowledge company. And if you take that one step forward, that really helps us achieve our vision of making the world more resilient. And I think with the use of data and with the technology trends combined together, that's how we can not only make ourselves better, but we can also help our clients become better. So I think it's an ingredient of mix of all of those things together.
And so, tech is a huge area. There's so many different facets to it. What particular areas are in focus for us at the moment?
I mean, and you're right. The arena is so vast and it's so fast moving. So picking a few is hard, but we've definitely done that, and you'll hear more deeper insights into it. So if I was to, the four that we are focused on first is data and analytics. Just going back to what I already said, data and analytics is super key. Things like real-time data sensors of Internet of Things, that all allows us all to make better decisions. Second is around platforms. Now, platforms that allow us to plug and play, flexible, speed to market, and really support our distribution and operations part of it. Third is infrastructure. Now, all of this cool stuff has to sit somewhere. And they're the topic of cloud. Cloud really enables some of these things to happen. And fourth is security. We have to make sure we do things in the right way. And cyber business is obviously forefront of most people's minds today. So if I was to package these things together, it's about bringing the data insights, the technology aspects, which leads us to make, speedier decisions, automation, and emerging new business models.
Terrific. And we're going to talk about cyber as well later on today. But for now, let's stay on cloud. So how are we using this technology for the benefit of Swiss Re, but also of our clients?
Yeah, I mean, cloud's a topic that's been around for a while. But for us, it's at the heart of everything that we do. So I think, again, there's, some core benefits, some obvious, some less obvious. So the first one around cloud is actually opens up new business opportunities. So it allows us to do things at pace and access new ecosystems that we wouldn't have thought about in the past. So a real example is our corporate solutions international program platform that we launched. We talked about that a while back. That allows a B2B platform that smaller businesses can access in one country, but can introduce their programs globally. That we've been able to do at pace, at speed, and make it available very quickly because of the cloud infrastructure. Second is around customer experience. Now, if you think about all the devices and the things we use on a day-to-day perspective in our own lives, those are actually all enabled by cloud. And if you think about the seamless integration, the customer pattern, and things that create an omni-channel experience, again, underlying that is cloud capability. The third one is perhaps the one is the most familiar to people, and sometimes why some organizations go into cloud first, and that's because of cost advantage. Historically, it's been approved that there's at least a 14 to 15% advantage of cost advantage of going to cloud based on traditional on-premise infrastructure. And the fourth point is more around cyber and around security and compliance. Going onto cloud allows us more control and out-of-the-box facilities that we can configure, but actually the experts make it a much more resilient platform. So those are, I guess, perhaps some more technical things, but also things that enable the business models that we're able to take advantage of today. And I guess, so saying that, I guess I want to go back to our theme previously, which is around partnerships and strategic tech partnerships. No, so for us, we have a multi-cloud approach, but we have a strategic partnership with Microsoft and the cloud solution. And that again gives us the agility and speed, which is paramount whether we're working within our own world or really helping our clients.
Yeah, terrific. So you just mentioned Microsoft as one of our key cloud providers, but we also have a partnership with them in the digital market center space. We'll hear more about this in just a little bit, but maybe you can give us a short overview.
Certainly, and I won't feel the thunder from Pierluigi later, but I guess there are, 4 core parts of it. So it's our opportunity to leverage the expertise of Microsoft and together create a digital innovation center, which takes some of these concepts and actually makes them a reality. So the 4 key ones I would highlight are connected vehicles and mobility. Another one is IoT, Industry 4.0. We hear a lot about that. And the last one is around natural catastrophe and resilience. So it's around, again, you will notice a theme coming through here for us, which is around strategic partnerships, data, cloud, and empowering these to become bigger and better as we progress it and utilize it. And some of these technologies, it's right, people will say they're quite nascent, but we think with the right approach, there are definitely opportunities to be had to be disruptive.
All right, so we will hear more about this later, but thanks for the overview there. And now let's talk a little bit about data and some more specifically, some data analytics. And you already talked about it before that this is at the heart of our business model. What are we doing here?
So it's we holistically thinking differently about data. So data we see as a living asset, and it's not a commodity that we trade, backwards and forwards. Back in the day, data would have been a static thing sitting on a piece of paper. Today it isn't. And the availability of data has become greater as well. So it's how do we take that data and make it and a real data economy is where we are today as opposed to a commodity, and create better decisioning, better data models to again go back to our core objective around resilience. So to give you a real example, how powerful is it when we create real data models and are able to provide our partners and our clients with, what they should do about city infrastructure, what can they do differently about health, very topical at the moment, and generate even for businesses greater insight that provides greater strategic decision making. So I think you can take data, almost forget the old school way of it's or sitting on a paper, use the power of technology to make it more real, combine it, and apply it to real societal challenges and needs, and make better decisions with it.
All right, thank you very much for that, Pravina. I'm sure we could keep going for a while. Thank you for the overview, though, and for being with us. You will also stay around for the first Q&A. We'll jump onwards to some of the other topics right now. But for me, one of the key takeaways clearly from this conversation is around the value of partnerships. And this is really important for us, but also for many of our trading partners and clients. And, especially when we think about just the high level of investment and the long-term commitment and the need to be prepared to fail before you get it right, that can be very daunting. And we've learned this ourselves from our own work internally, but also from working with our partners. And, on the other side of the coin as well, for our tech partners, this entry hurdles can also be quite high. And therefore, the sweet spot is really the collaboration. So thank you very much for kicking us off here, Pravina. And with that, we're going to go to our first presentation here. And we're going to build on the topic of Microsoft that Pravina has already mentioned here. And at the center of this partnership is this digital market center. And it's truly a new way of thinking about the business of risk and tech-enabled risk solutions. And we're going to have 2 speakers to take us through this. So we're going to start with Pierluigi Fasano, who is our lead business development for digital markets. And he was one of the driving forces behind this partnership. And then Gerry Lemcke is going to follow Pierluigi, and Gerry is our head product management in the public sector solutions team. And so his work actually drives awareness of how governments can upscale their resilience through better tech and better risk knowledge. And many of you will be familiar with some of the successes that the public sector solutions team has had, such as the excess rain protection of the CRIF. This is the Caribbean Catastrophe Risk Insurance Facility, and the landmark parametric rain protection for the state of Nagaland in India, which we just announced last week. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Pierluigi and Gerry, please.
Thanks, Urs, and thanks, Pravina, for the good introduction in terms of what is the environment where we are working on. I'm going to lead you through a brief introduction to the Microsoft partnership, and Gerry will deep dive into one of the use cases. So let's just make kind of thoughts around why, for example, a game like Minecraft has been so immensely successful. Because it's great to have a virtual world where you can go in and play God for a while. So you can change things, destroy things, throw in catastrophes, which is something you can do in Minecraft quite often, cut off supplies, build them up again. You can change everything and see the results in real time and take actions out of it. So in our partnership with Microsoft, one of the most exciting tools is something that we called the digital twins. So these tools will allow us to build a virtual world and then supply it with the big data and AI capabilities to simulate situations. So this is where really the risk digital twins start to become a representation of problems that business and society needs to solve and start to drive actions out of it. Simulations are not new at all, but Pravina pointed out to some of the inflection points of technologies like computing, storage, big data, artificial intelligence. So all these things completely change the dimension of speed and depth of the simulations. As a result, we can really take the concept to completely new level and offer access to a whole new range of end users. So yes, this technology will make it available for our insurance client, but by no means is intended to be just an underwriting tool on steroids. So we are creating really a rich set of data-driven risk tools, which will address a complete new set of stakeholders like finance ministers, supply chain managers of large companies, or for example, majors of disaster-prone cities, as we are going to hear later in the day. So the secret is the way we are using an underlying mix, a blend of risk knowledge, data, and AI. The risk digital twin is where the IP of Swiss Re will be used. We'll offer a complete look into interconnected risks and how those risks are being impacted here and now, as well as in the next future. This is where the action and the prevention will happen. The digital twins is a replica of an asset, or can be buildings, ships, cars, as well as very complex processes like driving, manufacturing, logistics. To provide at the very end an end-to-end view, which you can call it mobility when it is about people moving, or it is global supply chains, which is at the core of most of the economic flows. Let's just look to one simple area where we can use this in the space of Industry 4.0 and supply chain. So this is the area where we are really thinking together how to change our ability to deal with the unplanned. So we start with our ship risk digital twin, which is monitoring a ship sailing in Far East directed to Genoa in Italy. So the twin takes real data from all ship systems, combine them, and at some point, the twin signals that the ship engine requires some extra maintenance in order to avoid a major breakdown. So the captain at that point take therefore a decision to change the route and to stop for a quick repair. This will take a couple of days. This is a simple but extremely cost-effective intervention. Just to put in context, Swiss Re's risk experts tell me that machinery breakdown claims for cargo ships come in at around $600,000 per claim, as a rule of thumb. When projecting that to a global scale, this can represent a massive saving for both ship owners and insurers. But the story is not just about the single saving on that claim. So let's go one step further. So the ship risk digital twin start to forecast that due to the new schedule, the ship will now be impacted by adverse weather conditions on the route with a delay of 5 days. Our system can connect the information and knows also that on the ship there are parts for an Italian company building brakes for a European car manufacturer. At this point, kicks in the manufacturing risk digital twin, which knows how the work will be scheduled and notify the brake manufacturer that the delay of the material arrival is 5 days, and also notify the car manufacturer that the delay of the brake arrival is 8 days. At this point, it highlights the financial impacts and what are the best options to deal with the situation. minimizing both the disruption and trying to leverage all the insurance, financial protection, and services that will be put in place. From this point of view, we can start to see how the dynamic of the data can not only monitor the situation, but trigger actions and where the insurance kick in. Of course, this is just an example of how the system combines data from multiple sources and use digital twins as a new way to predict outcomes, risks, and drive actions. It is also quite obvious how, for example, business interruption insurance would plug in, making life easier for the end consumer as well as for the insurance, driven by more accurate underwriting thanks to our data and AI. Currently, we have talked about risks from weather and operations in this relatively simple example, but of course, we are going to layer over this operational map disruptions that can be due to natural catastrophes and pandemics, for example. I think everybody is aware of how much we discovered the pandemics as a very big risk for supply chains. My relatively simple example of the ship demonstrates just the concept. However, I would like to point out your attention to three important implications behind the concept. So the first one is there is a quantum leap in the way we can package risk knowledge and integrate insurance into larger risk management value chain. The second one is about broadening the customer base outside of the traditional insurance space. Yes, the insurance client is still there and is still quite in the center, but so is the shipping company as well as the manufacturers. Third, we are already having some solutions for many of the individual problems. So it's not dramatically new, but they are completely disconnected. They are siloed. So the ship owner thinks about the ship, the car manufacturer thinks about his production. With the Digital Market Center, we are going to connect the dots and we extend the boundaries of insurabilities well beyond what is possible today. This is not about an app, and this is not about traditional insurance or doing some lift around the traditional insurance. So this is about what we call a digital sixth sense, which enable companies, governments, organizations to really see through their risks, to change the way of planning against, to change the way they can manage, but also giving new options in order to accommodate with the risk proactively and after the event. It will also allow us to bring to market a completely new business model based in pay-as-you-go insurance. So if Minecraft was a game, for sure this partnership is not. And we are moving very fast into market with the propositions in disaster resilience, connected vehicles, and the industry supply chain. On these terms, I would hand over to Gerry, which will bring to life something that we are doing in the area of disaster resilience. To you, Gerry.
Thank you, Pierluigi. Pierluigi introduced the topic of the digital twin, and I will explain to you how we apply this concept of digital twin to basically the world of us. I mean, the socio-economic environment in which we live, and how we came about the topic of the disaster resilience partnership. I mean, resilience is of utmost importance, particularly also to governments, because the governments are ultimately the bearer or the insurer of the last resort. If something happens, I mean, they carry the ultimate responsibility. They are most affected by that, what we call internally the protection gap. So the difference between the insured loss and the economic losses. And it was said early on, economic losses most of the time by far outweigh the pure simple loss of a replacement cost of the physical damage. And I would go as far to say that in the resilient debate, I mean, the single most important blind spot is not really factoring in the consequence of the overall economic losses. And this is exactly where ultimately disaster resilience partnership attaches, to basically have the digital twin of these societies built to allow to stress test those systems against various impacts from the outside and see what the consequences are. And this way being enabled to fundamentally find the Achilles heel of these systems so we know exactly where to invest our resources the best possible way for the maximum possible outcome. I mean, as we said early on, it would have been fantastic to have this ready and in place, I mean, for COVID-19 to simulate the various outplays of this. Unfortunately, I mean, we announced the partnership with Microsoft just a few days ahead when COVID-19 was basically announced global pandemics by the World Health Organization. So what does Disaster Resilience Partnership do? It fundamentally allows to simulate, to run highly sophisticated artificial intelligence-driven simulations, as I said, to stress test the systems and find out what the implications are. And there's 4 key elements to it to really make it a quantum leap and also to separate from things which are already out in the market. Number 1, really, it has to run at scale. It's important that it's not only applicable to small scale localities, it has to run at regions, at countries, ultimately on a global scale. Secondly, it has to run at speed, because we have to bring the information as close as we possibly can to the actual decision-making processes to impact and influence them. Thirdly, it has to be economic, because it has to be affordable to a wide range of applications and cannot just be focused on some very specific cases where there's a lot of money behind them. It ultimately expand the boundaries also of the insurance. And fourthly, and most importantly also, is it has to run remotely, because a big implication often after disasters is you cannot have foots on the ground, you cannot have people to go there, observe the losses. So we want to make as good as possible the situation that we have this thing run remotely, that we do not have to have the boots on the ground. So to give you an example, let's say the typical kind of like coastal community being affected by tropical cyclones, what would be the normal reaction if a cyclone is approaching? It would be to fully evacuate the city with all the consequences it has, long downtime. You bring the people in harm's way because they might be sitting for a long time on clogged highways. A lot of extra cost involved into this. Having detailed knowledge about, where people are moving, having analysis of the escape routes, figuring out that there might be enough hardened buildings actually in the city allows for way more refined ways to prepare for the situation and make the city more resilient. During and after the event, you know where the supply chains are broken down, you know where still resources are to be found, so you can help the people to get much better online, get the grid up and running, reduce downtime, and that ultimately could generate a much larger economic benefit as you would have otherwise today. The question is, why do we need Microsoft for such a partnership? You can imagine, and we addressed this already, the sheer amount of data which is required to be handled, to be stored in a safe environment, to offer the trust to the consumers that their data is kept in safe environments. Secondly, the sheer amount of computing power you have that we can benefit and utilize, let's say, the quantum-inspired computing by Microsoft. We can utilize in this partnership the artificial intelligence which is this offer. And that this is not just fiction, but already real. And the past few weeks we've worked on this intensively is leveraging their capabilities to design and establish, let's say, building footprints using AI technology and remote sense information. So recently, they brought out, 125 million of building footprints mapped in the United States, also in other countries. So this is turning real, as we said. It's not a fiction expected to only materialize in a few years down the road. Then also very important, it's called Disaster Resilience Partnership. So this is a platform, this is a digital market, which is open to ingest information from other partners so that we really combine all the data pods, bring together a situation, we can produce a holistic review, and not just an individual review exclusively powered and run by Swiss Re. So what is the quantum leap here really? It really, as we said earlier, it gets us really beyond the typical insurance relationship of simple replacement costs. We really try to look into the interconnectivities of a socioeconomic system so we can provide a holistic answer, find new avenues for support, mitigation, adaptation, and ultimately also measures to enhance and improve risk transfer opportunities. And to give you one last example here, and that was not at the time inspired by Disaster Resilience Partnership, but it's a wonderful example of that. If you think about the recently completed transaction in Quintana Roo, Mexico, which is known as the coral reef protection. Yes, it's protecting coral reefs, but if you really go through the value chain, you see, okay, the coral reefs are very fundamental to protect the beach sand. The beach sand is the single most important asset for the local wholesale industry, and this is important for the tourism. So if you take the reefs away, you take the beach sand away, you basically cut off the income stream for these coastal communities. So with that sense, you created a holistic view of the situation, which inspired then the hotel and tourism industry to unlock the funds necessary to build this protection, which in its end consequence also protected the reefs. And that's what we mean with offering holistic solutions. And that's really what inspires me with this project, which is the value of this partnership going forward, to have the insights in these interconnectivities and allow to develop new solutions which are not available today, but will be in the next immediate future. And with that, I give back to Urs. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Gerry and Pierluigi. In many ways, this is the realization of a lot of work that insurers have been working on for a while. And the big lesson for me is how the right partnerships can bring this all together so that a whole new group of stakeholders can access that risk knowledge. So we'll continue on another topic here that we've also mentioned before, which is iptiQ. And iptiQ is Swiss Re's digital white labeling B2B2C insurance platform. And it's our own startup with a proven business model. And here we're actually combining the best of InsurTech with the backbone of an insurance company. And talking more about iptiQ here today for us is Carl Christensen. Carl is the CEO for our EMEA Life and Health business within iptiQ. Carl, over to you.
Thank you very much, Urs. So let me start by asking you all to put yourself in the shoes of one of iptiQ's typical partners. You are an insurer who are looking to reach customers in a more digital way rather than the more traditional agent or intermediary route. You are a bank who are looking to widen your offering also to include insurance. Or you might be a retailer who sit on a significant customer base and you would like to utilize that in order to cross-sell into new insurance solution to widen your customer base as such. Now, if you would like to move into insurance and you're one of those companies, then you have to take a number of steps. And these are quite significant steps. You need to obtain license, you need to capitalize the balance sheet, regulatory approvals, find the right team, the right experts, and ultimately create a very engaging end-to-end digital insurance platform, as that's really the must today, all the way from administration to claim. And this often takes years, and it comes at tremendous amount of investments, in tens of millions of investment often. And sadly, the failure rate is also quite high due to the complexity involved. And this is very much where iptiQ comes in to best usage, and through our digital platform, through our end-to-end insurance solution, we enable companies, even those who are not insurance experts, to roll out insurance solutions within 90 days, such as life and home insurance, so they can really evolve their product base. Now, we create these products and design them to ensure we provide the best digital sales journeys to match our partners' brands. And we do that in a truly white label fashion, as Urs mentioned. And that really enables them to focus on what they actually want to do, namely to sell insurance through their unique brands and enlarge their customer base. So not having to spend time on all of those other complexities I mentioned. So that really puts us in the spot of being a true B2B company, but we of course also focus a lot to provide these partners with the right B2C capabilities so they can really evolve their offering. Now, our initiative started very much pure life protections. That's how we started. However, in the course of the last 2 years, we've also evolved our solution to provide property and casualty, enabling insurance such as household, travel, cyber, and mobility insurance. And what's key with this, as mentioned, we don't sell directly to consumers. That's with our brand partners, and they remain the real owner of those customers, so they can also enlarge their value of their own brand. Now, and through this, we make insurance more accessible to consumers. And well, I'll come later on a little bit in terms of the numbers that we can reach through this model. But what we also do is provide scale learnings. Scale learnings by working with all of those partners to accumulate up those learnings and then play them back in the best way to that community in terms of how they best also can sell insurance. Now, Urs alluded very much to the COVID crisis we're currently facing, and we have as well in the iptiQ space been very much tested by this crisis, and due to the nature of the model we provide our partners, they have really been able to continue undisturbed, and generally we've been able to then maintain through them the same sales as we had pre-COVID-19 levels, which gives a testimony to the digital model that they really have. Now, let me take you through a little bit of a step-by-step approach about how we really bring those propositions to the market. So step one is that we very much work with a partner to understand their brand, the value of their brand and their customers. And then we jointly develop a product. Now, we've invested heavily in product configuration so we can really differentiate products from each other, and we can create a wide range of products to these partners. Step two is to understand the underwriting approach and how we would like to develop that. We have a range of different underwriting from simple to advanced, but our key objective is to automate underwriting to the extent possible, and this is a field we invest heavily in. We like decisions of underwriting to be made during the digital buying process, rather than having clients having to go through a lot of extended forms or go to doctors for fluids and bloods, etc., in order to come with a decision. And once the underwriting is designed, we spend time really thinking about the distribution of the product with our partners. And through our technology, we can offer it to be online, by phone, or through agents and intermediaries, or a combination of all of those. And last but not least, just prior to launch, we also make sure we have a branded online service portal developed so the clients can engage with the insurance product also after it's sold, as often they're not engaging with insurance companies at all during the life cycle. Now, while all of these four steps takes place in the background, a team is also working on ensuring that everything is in place end to end in the insurance value chain, ranging from premium collection to claims handling. So we can really sell these new policies, but also service them with high quality process. Now, that all sounds simple, but really to enable this, we clearly require superior technology. And for us, that has meant very much that we have an in-house tech development team that continuously work on the platform implementation and adding new features on an ongoing basis for the ever-changing tech landscape. And taking usage of the latest tech development for us is super key. And as such, we're not really a believer in traditional large one-off tech investments, but rather constant investment flow combined with in-house teams to develop our technology. So through this is really how we scale the tech investment. Pravina alluded to that as well. For every dollar we then invest, our partners benefit for that. Rather than them having to invest all of that, we scale that investment for them. And as such, we can really provide them with the latest framework of technology. And one of the key areas there is also how we've been able to decrease the time of onboarding of new partners and launch new products. That used to take almost half a year. We got that down now to less than a quarter, but also moving now into 2021, we have initiatives where we will even be able to onboard new partners within 4 weeks. Now, having an end-to-end white label digital solution and having that deployed rapidly is a great achievement, but it is not necessarily a recipe and a guarantee for success, particularly when it relates to pure online sales. The most difficult thing with insurance is selling insurance. And to support our partners in this, we manage to work with them in a way of how we constantly improve the sales conversions. As an example, we know through our own UK customer research that 27% of all new customers in the UK in 2019 started their application process online, but however, only 3 in 10 actually completed it online. So, that just shows the key thing iptiQ is trying to transform and improve. And we have teams dedicated to optimizing then these online conversion rates by using analytic tools, a series of different techniques in terms of user experience, user interfaces, and not fundamentally putting behavioral economic as an umbrella around that, often utilizing multiple A/B testing simultaneously. Now, this effort has yielded considerable improvement, and we see our partners constantly increase their conversion ratios on year by year. And this really is what we call the ecosystem of learnings of iptiQ. So rather than one partner selling their solutions and actually seeing a lot of issues occurring through that, we can consolidate these learnings through a lot of A/B testing with all of our partners and play that back for their benefit. Yeah. Now, to give you a key example of that, with one partner we've worked with during the last 2 years, we've been able to implement a number of these behavioral changes. We've been able to increase sales 5-fold during that period. We have also increased conversion by 200%. And we've also been able to then, through them, cut customer acquisition by 2/3. So that gives you a sense of what we also try to do from a distribution support to our partners. Now, as Urs said, it's our own risk tech, and currently we have developed this with 34 partners, and we've evolved that to 10 countries through 3 continents. And today we have more than 400,000 policyholders on our platform. So that gives you a sense in the way of how we've been able to evolve this and also actually been able to scale this for our partners. So with that said, Urs, I allow myself to hand back to you.
Great, thank you very much, Carl. And for me, there are 2 really attractive points to underline here. The first one is that iptiQ enables our partners, even companies with no insurance expertise, to offer products such as life or home insurance within just 90 days. And they're working to be able to onboard a partner in Europe within only 4 weeks in the near future. Secondly, iptiQ creates an ecosystem of learning to evolve digital insurance sales, resulting in our partners improving digital sales conversion 50% or more year on year. So very impressive from that perspective. Now, we'll go to one more topic. We'll talk about automotive. But before we do that, we are running a little bit behind. I think what's happening here, you can feel the passion of our colleagues coming through. And hopefully you're enjoying the details with which we're all talking about some of our tech initiatives. We'll probably shorten the Q&A a little bit so we can also get to the other topics. But of course, we're very interested in your questions. And if we run out of time, then we'll just take them afterwards. And we can, just go answer them through our media relations team. So not to worry, we'll get to the questions as well. Let's go to motor. I'm going to hand it over right now to Kim and to Eric. Kim Nielsen is Senior Product and Partnership Manager, and then Eric Schuh is our Global Head of P&C Solutions. And they're going to talk about motor and what we're doing there. Over to you guys.
Hi there. My name is Eric Schuh. Thank you, Urs, for handing over. And we took the hint. We will be on time, Urs, and everyone on the call. So welcome to a new way of pioneering how insurance premiums are calculated with clear benefits for insurers and all of us who are paying insurance premiums on our cars, the ADAS risk score. Before we go there, my name is Eric Schuh. I'm serving as Swiss Re's Global Head of P&C Solutions. And as you've already heard, I'm here with Kim Nielsen, who is going to speak about ADAS in a minute. We're going to talk about that topic today because we want to show how we make use of data, technology, and innovation to develop products and services for automotive and mobility providers globally, and how, together with insurers, we put these products and services into a market with a purpose of making the world more resilient. It's part of our offering. We also have telematics, embedded products, mobility solutions. We work on electric vehicle solutions. But today's topic is the ADAS risk score, a stepping stone towards autonomous vehicles. What is it, the ADAS risk score, Kim? Handing over to you to share a bit more detail.
Thank you, Eric, and thank you, Urs, for introducing me, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for tuning in today. I hope it's been interesting so far, and I will get right to it so we can stay on time. So ADAS, which stands for Automated Driver Assistance Systems. Let me just explain what they are. They are these systems that are fitted into vehicles today. So one could be automated emergency brake. So what that does is if you're out driving and you're texting on your phone, which you would never do, or you become distracted and somebody steps out in front of your car, the system will stop the car. Could also be lane keep assist. Let's say you're changing lanes and there's a car in your blind spot, the system will help prevent a collision. So there are many of these systems, and they're increasingly being fitted into vehicles today, essentially assisting the drivers in critical traffic situations, making cars safer today than ever before. However, as cars are becoming safer, incurring fewer collisions, this is not reflected into the premiums that you and I pay for our car insurance. And why is that? Well, there are two main reasons. The first one is knowing which automated driver assistance systems is in a specific vehicle is knowledge actually only the car manufacturer has. Even you and I as owners are left confused by different names for the same features from brand to brand. But even if we did know the exact features we have in our safety systems we have in our car, where they are manufactured and what the car manufacturer did with them when they put them into the car makes a huge difference in performance. Which leads me to the main issue of why you don't see owning a safer car being reflected in your premium. See, the performance of these safety systems from brand to brand, but also from model to model within the same brand is not the same. And there's really there can be a world of difference. So to tackle this problem, we, together with the BMW Group, have built the Swiss Re ADAS risk score, which was introduced just last year. And the ADAS risk score builds on 3 pillars. So by working with car manufacturers, we are actually using technology already fitted into vehicles and combining that with data, namely claims data. So basically matching claims data with vehicles fitted with automated driver assistance systems up against vehicles that are not. And by doing this, we get a clear image of the impact of these safety systems. While this is comprehensive knowledge, claims data actually only works as a backward-looking information because it only works for cars that has already been on the roads for 2 to 3 years where you have a lot of data. So what about new cars? And that's why we have the second and the third pillar of the ADAS risk score. So the second pillar is live vehicle testing. Here we test vehicles and the performance of the safety systems in, shall we say, actual insurance situations. So things that happen out there on the road daily. And by doing this, we can see the true performance of these systems. And one of the benefits of working directly with car manufacturers is that we get the chance to test vehicles even before they enter the road. And that means for the ADAS risk score that there's no latency. It is always up to date. The final pillar of the ADAS risk score is simulations. So certain shall we say, traffic situations or conditions, it is not feasible to do with live vehicle testings. That could be high-speed maneuvers. So here you use simulations, which is just better for that. And by combining these 3 pillars using robust statistical methodologies, Swiss Re can determine how much safer a vehicle is due to its fitted automated driver assistance systems equipment. And what we do is we give each vehicle a score, and simply put, the higher the score, the safer the vehicle. This score is available globally through an online platform, and it is really the quintessential of pioneering road safety worldwide. Why? Because by sharing this score with insurers, we allow them to reflect the technology already fitted into cars into their underwriting activities and tariffs. And this does two things. That allows them to reflect this into the premiums that we all pay. But what also will happen is we will see a segmentation towards safer vehicles, which is benefiting everyone and everything. So the Swiss Re score is unique, and it is very much in line with the aim of my team to stay ahead of the curve and to contribute to road safety on a global scale. And like Eric said, well, we want to make the world more resilient, and this is one way of doing it. So I hope I stayed on time, Urs. This is all from me, and I will be here for the Q&A if you want to continue the conversation. But for now, I will hand over to Eric again.
And I will conveniently hand over back to Urs without saying much more. Hopefully we could show you that this is an intermediary step towards fully autonomous vehicles. So if you buy a better, more ADAS equipped car in the future, hopefully you will see the benefit with more and more insurance companies in terms of lower premiums, and also the safety benefit, of course, that you have from buying such a car. Back to Urs.
Great, thanks, Eric and Kim. And with that, we actually have arrived at our first pit stop for Q&A. And if you want to come off of mute and ask your questions, please do so now. You can also, throughout the entire session, just post your questions in the chat. And there's also a raise your hand button at the bottom of the platform here. So any way that you want to ask a question on our speakers so far, please feel free to do so. Maybe I will start with one question here for Pravina. And your track record is very much in the tech transformation space, and you have a lot to do with change and change management and agility. And what do you think about the momentum we've picked up right now through COVID-19 and everything that is associated with that? Will that accelerate digital transformation, change in the insurance industry in your mind?
Yes, absolutely, without a doubt. And we've seen it firsthand. What we've seen is, prior when we were having conversations around digitizing the components of the value chain or making things more accessible, digital wasn't you could say externally, digital, it was sometimes hard to have those conversations because the value of it wasn't really obvious. But through a very unfortunate situation, I think the value of that is almost, smack people in the face, if I can be so, blatant, because it's like people are actually saying to us, if only I had digitized that part of the value chain, if only I had that tool. So I think that in itself has brought it much more further up the priority list for many people we speak to.
Great, thanks for that, Pravina. Let me go to the room again and see if there's a question now from anybody. Otherwise, we go to the next presenter. There was nothing in the chat that I saw, but anybody would like to ask a live question? I think we're now just getting one question in through the chat. Let me check it. It's a question for Pierluigi. I have to actually click on this so I can read it, sorry. So Pierluigi, this is from Tony. From Cover Publications, Africa. And the question reads, are you approaching digitization in the same way between developed and developing countries?
Thanks for the question. Very good, and also very compelling in terms of what we are doing, especially in the partnership with Microsoft. Basically not, in the meaning, clearly we understand that there is a different need on, for example, generating and extracting data in a developing country other than in a development. So one of the examples probably also Gerry can comment on is about, we were talking about building footprints, but also additional elements about those buildings. This is widely available if we look into the US, but of course, if we go in other developing countries, there is much less. So of course, we are really approaching in a very specific way problems when the technology is not yet there, and trying to use also type of leapfrog solutions where it's possible with developing countries, so to not go through the whole pain that probably also developed countries have suffered, and we learned a couple of things to be implemented.
Terrific. Thanks, Pierluigi, and thanks, Tony, for the question. Anything else? Look at this. Another question. Let me go to this question is for Pravina. You mentioned earlier that you didn't think insurtechs would disrupt the insurance business model. Could you explain why not?
Yeah, certainly. So I think what I mean is on their own. So I think, insurtechs bring great skill sets with them. They either are trying to attempt to disrupt parts of the insurance value chain, whether that is, I guess, consumer or client facing or in the back office, or they're bringing some nascent piece of knowledge or expertise that didn't exist. The other reason why some insurtechs have come to play is they're actually solving problems that they've experienced themselves in somewhere in the industry. But what they tend not to have is sometimes the in-depth knowledge of organizations like Swiss Re. So they need that internal knowledge. They also sometimes need the brand and the partnership approach to really get their voice and their solution heard. And majority of the times, those solutions are really valuable. So I think it is taking the value of the solutions and the pain points that they're trying to solve, combining it with the knowledge and the expertise of organizations like ourselves, and together, I think they will succeed.
Super, thanks. Clearly, a complex partnership topic there. Let's take one more question. This last one was from Oliver. Thank you, Oliver. And this one is from Clara. And then we'll answer this one and we'll go to our next presenters. Other questions, just please keep them coming. We'll answer them at the end or afterwards in writing. And so this question from Clara here is, what do you think? The insurance sector can no longer be conceived without insurtech. So let's just open it up. Pravina, if you want to start, any others who want to chime in, please do so.
Yeah, no, let me start. So I think, we have to think about it together. You can't ignore it. And as I said previously, you can't sit back and relax, because the pace at which the industry is moving, the pace at which the technology and the enabling capabilities are moving, means you have to harness it to either improve the organizations itself or make better solutions for our clients. So I think it's, again, a combination. Don't ignore it, but embrace it.
Excellent. Why don't we leave it at that? Thank you very much for that, Pravina, and thank you for the questions. We'll now go to our next presenters, and we're going to talk about cyber. Next up are going to be Maya Bundt. Maya is the head of cyber and digital solutions, and Anthony Cordonnier, who is the head of cyber product management. And they're both part of our cyber risk solutions team within the business unit reinsurance. And with our cyber solutions, we help individuals, businesses, and the public sector to better manage cyber risks. Over to you, please.
Thanks, Urs, for the introduction, and hello, everybody. I think, Urs, you have said it in the introduction as well. The coronavirus crisis really led us all working from home all of a sudden. And people are still working from home in many markets, also in many different industries. And not all the companies were actually prepared for this. Many of the companies affected had to react very rapidly to enable their workforce to work from home. And not all companies then, and also not all employees, did this in a well-planned and secure way. People were all of a sudden working on private devices within their own networks. The policies weren't adjusted for this increased working at home. Just think about, printing or the personal device policies. So this was really a very special situation for many companies, how they operate, but also a lot of companies had to adjust their business models towards online business models so that they could also actually weather this pandemic and still weather this pandemic in a better way. Now, at the same time, attackers tried to gain from the fear of the people and from the need for information in these unprecedented times. And what they did is they replaced other pretenses with COVID-19 for example, in phishing emails, to get more people to click on links, for example, or to visit websites. We've seen that in the first quarter of this year, around 16,000 newly registered Corona domains were created. And about 20% of these domains were actually or are actually suspicious or even malicious. At the same time, ransom payments increased to over 30 by over 30% to no more than $100,000 on average. So you see the crisis, the Corona crisis, actually accentuated not only the digitization or push for digitization, but also the risks associated with it. And what we have seen is that the digitization is actually one way to stay resilient in times of a pandemic when people cannot move and when they have to stay at home. What we have to do now is we need to make sure that the digital realm in itself becomes more resilient, now more so than ever. And with this, I would like to hand over to Anthony.
Thanks, Maya. Thanks, Urs. So my name is Anthony Cordonnier. I look after our cyber underwriting function within the reinsurance business unit. And I just wanted to spend a couple of minutes giving you a bit of an outlook, short-term and long-term on the cyber insurance market. So according to our own estimates, the cyber insurance market for 2020 will land at about $5.5 billion. So if you compare that to other more established lines of business, of course, it's still quite small, and the levels of penetration are still quite low. So first, how can we explain the low penetration? I think that the main factor is really risk awareness, and the missing risk awareness that's been a growth inhibitor, particularly for SMEs and individuals. I think the driver is that many small businesses don't see the risk as real, or at least they didn't see that the risk is real up till now. And if you go back a little bit, a few years ago, when the cyber insurance market first emerged and how the products first developed, it was actually as a response to highly publicized data breaches for big businesses and the big retailers in the US particularly, and that drove the growth of the market, particularly with large corporations. And now, if we look at penetration for large corporates, it's way over 50%. So the market is really developed. Having said that, the risk has really evolved over time, and now we don't talk about privacy breaches all the time. We're talking about ransomware attacks a lot, and resulting obviously extortion money and business interruption with all of the new tricks in the book that Maya just highlighted, and the risk profiles have also evolved. So in the past, you saw those big corporates in the press, and now we're aware that smaller firms are being targeted as well. So if you link that back to the crisis and the elements that Maya has mentioned, you've got all those businesses that now forced to operate online. And what's really highlighted is the need for robust business continuity plans. So we've really in the last few months seen some significant disparities in that respect. We've seen companies that from day one were able to operate completely online. Business continuity plans worked to perfection, and they were able to serve their clients and customers as previously. Whereas other companies have had to really scramble up to their remote access for employees, buy laptops, things that really should be planned years in advance. So that's gonna be a game changer, really. Bad actors are seeing opportunities. Unfortunately, we've seen health services being targeted. Unfortunately. The WHO, I think a few weeks ago, estimated that there was an increase of factor 5 of cyber attacks since the COVID crisis started. So obviously, phishing scams and the like are being used, and vulnerable people and company. We don't really know how that's going to translate in terms of claims frequency and severity, but undeniably it's going to have a notable impact. And the trend of ransomware attacks was already with us, and it's certainly going to be amplified by the crisis. So yeah, the flip side of that is that many businesses have slowed down. So from a business interruption standpoint, we're going to see perhaps a correlation between a drop in revenue and the reduction in business interruption claims. So perhaps a few words on the long term. So what could this mean for the cyber insurance markets? I think really, if you think about cyber insurance as a low penetration product up till now, we think that it's really going to move from that kind of luxury optional purchase to a must-have. More and more businesses have actually been forced online to survive, and the risk landscape, even though it's shifted already, I think psychologically it's really going to move from the traditional brick and mortar to online networks. And the growth of the cyber business has been very healthy over the last few years, 20 to 30% a year. And we think that the crisis actually might be that watershed moment where we see the mass penetration of the products reaching SMEs as well as private individuals. Mm-hmm. Over to you, Maya.
Yeah, thanks, Anthony. I think you've said it and very nicely lined out. What's the state of the market? Now you might ask yourselves, what is Swiss Re actually doing? And I think what we have done, or how we have reacted, is we have built modular solutions that support our reinsurance clients to bring the right cyber insurance products to the market. And that could be for, as Anthony mentioned, for those areas in the market that need it the most right now, where the protection gap is actually the largest. That's the individuals, and that's the smaller and medium-sized companies, right? And for the cyber insurance products is really one thing that is special is that they very often, and especially for these vulnerable policyholders, they come with specific services, not only with the risk transfer part, but they have these services attached to them, and that makes a lot of sense. So those additional services could be, for example, that if something happens, you have a ransomware attack, as Anthony lined out, you cannot operate, all your data is locked, then there would be a specialized IT forensics provider, a company coming in and helping detecting what has happened and actually making sure that the data is retrieved and that the company can work as much as possible. And as you probably know or see in this example, is both the insured, the policyholder, and the insurance company have a benefit from this kind of service. And similar things happen and can happen. Similar services are added to also cyber insurance for individuals. One very important aspect here is also that there are preventative services added to those policies. That means that insurance really has an interest, an inherent interest in not only stepping in when something has happened, but also support companies and individuals to better prepare themselves, to become more aware, but also to increase their what we call cyber hygiene. And that cyber hygiene that could include elements like basic hygiene in doing regular data backups or keeping devices and software up to date. But it also would include, for example, regular employee training. So that cannot be underestimated how big the impact of the human being on this rather often seen as a technical risk actually is. So Swiss Re has, as I said, developed these solutions, and we provide them to our clients on a global scale, and to support the growth of the market and support our clients in putting starting their journey in this still quite new and still strongly growing line of business. And with this, I would like to hand back to Urs.
Great, thank you, Maya and Anthony. There's actually a question that came in, and it's for Anthony. Just a point of clarification that the market size of the $5.5 billion that you referred to is actually premiums.
Absolutely. So $5.5 billion global premium estimated for 2020. So.
Super. Thanks for that, Anthony. So, on that very point, it's very clear to me that, the demand for cyber insurance will clearly grow. And for us at Swiss Re here, we have a very important role to play by supporting our clients to bring the right cyber insurance products to the market. So jumping from one exciting topic in cyber to the next one around life and health, we have with us here Amanda Hosken. Amanda is the Global Head of Life and Health Solutions. And Amanda will tell us about how we are increasing people's resilience in a way that makes sense for them in the context of today's digital world. What this specifically means is we have found a way to link people's lifestyles to assessing and underwriting health risks. And Amanda will tell us more. Amanda, over to you, please.
Thanks, Urs. And yeah, slightly different approach, but of course, cyber comes in here too, because we've been talking about digital technologies in capturing some of this data. So if I could ask you to think perhaps a little bit about you're an individual and you've experienced what we would call a life event. So something's changed in your life. Perhaps you bought a home, perhaps you welcomed your first child, perhaps you started your new job. All of those events that might trigger a need for insurance. Perhaps you've previously purchased insurance in the life and health space. So you go along to your insurer and you know what's coming. You're going to expect a lot of clinical questions. They're going to ask your weight, your height, perhaps they do some blood work, perhaps they're going to take your blood pressure. And this is important because it's how in the life and health space we assess mortality risk. A complex way of simply saying how much longer we expect you to live. And that's then translated into a risk premium, which determines the price for your product. And while as individuals, we do recognize, of course, height and weight and blood pressure are good indicators of heart health, so too are our daily activities, how much exercise we do or perhaps don't take, our nutrition, the amount of sleep we got, the mental well-being, a key topic of interest at the moment through the COVID crisis, and the environment in which we operate. These are also important factors in our health, and particularly our heart health, which is the key risk factor that we use in assessing and underwriting risk and determining insurance premiums. You may also be one of the millions of individuals today who use a mobile device or a smartphone to capture your daily activities, maybe the number of steps you've taken, perhaps the breakfast that you had, or maybe you have a sleep app that determines how well you slept that night. So you know that is important in assessing your overall health, not just the key clinical factors you might get at a doctor's visit twice a year. So why is this important? Well, it's important because as an industry, and particularly at Swiss Re, we believe it's important to now personalize the insurance industry and to recognize the holistic nature of individuals and the dynamic nature of health. So how your health will change over your lifetime and with the activities and the lifestyle that you live. So how do we do this? We do this by leveraging the wealth of individual health data now in the public domain from those people tracking their sleep and their exercise and their nutrition. We even know that it's possible to manage chronic diseases such as diabetes using a smartphone app, not only to manage it, but to affect the outcomes and to improve your health. So at Swiss Re, we are now changing the way we underwrite risk by taking into account not just the clinical factors, but also the lifestyle factors that each of us are exposed to every day. And we call this our big six lifestyle factors. So that would be sleep, nutrition, daily activity, mental well-being, substance abuse, and environment. And perhaps the last two seem a bit clinical. So substance abuse, perhaps use would be a better word. So how much alcohol you might take, whether or not you're a direct smoker. Environment would be things like the pollution that you're exposed to, or perhaps secondhand smoke in your home. So this is important because it allows us to recognize the holistic nature of an individual, not just your point in time health, but how your health is changing dynamically every day with the actions and activities that you take. We show by including these lifestyle factors in our underwriting manual, our flagship underwriting manual, and in our underwriting philosophy. And by doing that, we show our commitment to individual health and building resilience. So let's talk a little bit about, so how do we do this? So I spoke about the wealth of individual data in the market. Of course, we seek the permission of an individual to use that data. But because of the vast amount of data now available, such as steps and daily activity and nutrition, we can understand and map the impacts of lifestyle factors to health and mortality risk. So a reminder again, the mortality risk is how long we expect you to live. We can use the amount of data to calculate the interaction between these health factors, so your lifestyle factors, and the clinical factors that we would ordinarily have used to assess risk. And most importantly, we can create a dynamic environment where we recognize that individuals are managing their health on a daily basis, and we can reward them for doing that, for taking the actions that help them live the longest and healthiest life that they can, and for building individual resilience. So why now? Well, simply because of the volume of credible data available. So by volume, yes, many people have had wearables or tracking devices for a while, but the proliferation in today's environment is extensive. Most people, to some extent, are engaging in a step counter or a nutrition app, or perhaps even a more sophisticated biomarker tracking device. But also important is the credibility of this data. In order for us in the insurance industry to use data to assess risk and ultimately price products, we need to satisfy regulatory scrutiny, which means that the data we collect and the correlations we draw between that data and your health, and hence your insurance premium, must be solid. And the credibility of the data is what's also changed. Today, we're able to link the information collected on a smartphone device to the individual collecting that data. Simply put, there are available software apps that can tell you if the person carrying the phone, counting their steps, is the person whose policy they're attributing those steps to. So now we have a volume of credible data that we can calculate the interactions between. And the final step in that is actually doing the modeling, which says we have an algorithm or a formula by which we can link your premium to your actions and activities taken. That needs to be simple, it needs to be transparent, and it needs to be clear so that individuals can understand the triggers of how an insurance premium might change, and hence the impact of the positive actions they take on a daily basis to live a healthier and longer life. So why is this valuable? Well, for a number of reasons. And first of all, because the market is now demanding it. Individuals know that there are more than just a number of clinical factors like blood pressure and body mass index. We know we are holistic beings, and we want to be recognized for that. We also want to be recognized for the actions we take to manage our health and to look after ourselves, both today and over time. And we expect our products and the insurance to be personal, to recognize that we are evolving beings and that the needs of what we might have today and how our health might change are taken into account in a credible way. And it's also nice to get a little bit of a reward at the end for those actions that you've taken, perhaps a premium reduction, to show that we are recognizing the efforts that you are making to live a healthier life. And most importantly, the industry and Swiss Re stands behind you. And then most importantly, of course, and you heard Carl speak earlier about iptiQ, the digital journey. As we collect this data in a digital way through smartphones, we can actually complete an underwriting journey through a digital app without having to necessarily go to your doctor's office or collect blood work, which interestingly enough became a very important point in the last few months as we went through the COVID crisis, when in many places doctors' offices and blood work was prohibited and you could not get it. So finally, why Swiss Re? Well, essentially, we have dedicated a large number of resources and time to understanding both the impact of these lifestyle factors on your individual health and also how they correlate with the cardiac factors or the heart-related factors that we would ordinarily have collected in a clinical sense. Again, these big six that I mentioned, sleep, nutrition, physical activity, mental well-being, substance abuse, and environmental factors are also highly correlated with heart health. And that's why we've chosen them. They're also represented in other risk scores that you will see in the industry. We have built these into our underwriting philosophy, and we are building them into our flagship underwriting manual. And through those two initiatives, we are now able to work with clients to build products that evolve and meet the needs of individuals, that change as individuals change and as their risk and their health evolves, and that most importantly supports the long-term health and resilience of each individual seeking support and protection in our market. With that, I thank you, and I will hand back to Urs.
Terrific. Thank you very much, Amanda. What I find fascinating is this concept of dynamic underwriting. And we're now entering this new world of credible digital health and well-being data being available. And with the permission of the individual, we can now use lifestyle factors together with the clinical factors to measure mortality risk over the lifetime of a policy. So very exciting stuff, Amanda. Thank you very much. We will now go to our last speaker, our last presentation for today before we have the second Q&A session again. And we're with Jeff Bohn. Jeff is the Swiss Re Institute's Chief Research Officer, and he's going to give us a visionary snapshot into the Institute's work into quantum cities. Jeff, over to you.
Thanks, Urs. I think the important thing to take away from my presentation, because you've already heard a lot about the technology trends and the other work that we're doing, is that within the Swiss Re Institute, we are trying to look out 3 to 10 years about where we think the opportunities lie. One of the exciting things about this job is that I've seen over the last 4 or 5 years, somewhat of a compression between the time we envision things that can be deployed and then actually seeing them realized as new products or new services. And you've heard a lot of them so far. This framework I'm going to talk about right now, we call the Quantum Cities R&D framework. And what distinguishes this framework is the fact that we are leveraging our partnerships, which are quite extensive within the Swiss Re Institute ecosystem. It includes academics, technology companies, as well as governments. And what I like about that, given that most of my career has been in research, this gives us an opportunity to see how these tools can work in real life applications. Now, the challenge that we find in this context is that the trends that Pravina highlighted at the beginning about the increased compute power, the explosion of data, the new opportunities, we certainly see that at the intersection of what's available with companies and governments, but pulling that all together into actionable insight proves to be quite difficult. And the last 10 years or so have seen actually quite a number of pilots done around the world. We've been involved in several of them, where you can see narrow success of a particular technology, but a failure at the enterprise end-to-end level. And so that's really the focus of this Quantum Cities framework. You know, we are seeing right now there's 37 cities that have populations in excess of 10 million people. Every month you're getting the equivalent of New York City being added somewhere in the world. So this connectivity just continues to exponentially grow. Now, you might ask, given the difficulties of actually deploying end-to-end enterprise systems at scale, why do we think that this is an interesting research topic in the sense of how it can lead to real transformative business? And my answer there is that there are several technology trends that are converging that are making this possible. The first is the deployment of Internet of Things, IoT. So this is putting sensors in a range of places, going from the infrastructure of a city to manufacturing plants, certainly into the supply chain. We also have the development of these new networks such as 5G, and that bandwidth is going to be quite important to facilitate some of these new services that we're researching. The deployment of new technologies like distributed ledgers, I think solve some of the data and digital trust issues. There's a related topic that we call confidential computing, which breaks into privacy preserving analytics and differential privacy preservation. These are important trends to make a lot of the more sensitive data available to analytics. And then there's this overlay of the different kinds of machine intelligence, artificial intelligence, and machine learning. So these trends are converging in a way that gives us a lot of optimism that we can now offer some new kinds of insurance products and adjacent services. And so I want to talk about a couple of those concrete examples. The first is the ability to do much more robust resilience modeling. So you can imagine, for example, the ability to look at the impact of a flood or an earthquake on an urban area, and a lot of what we already do analyzes that impact. But if you really want to dive into the cascade of effects, look at secondary or tertiary effects, you need a higher level of modeling. And one of the threads of research that looks quite promising in this space is where you start with a physics-based model, such as a hydrodynamic model for flooding, but then you overlay on top of that machine learning-enabled models that create what's called a hybridized solution. And this can allow you to do things like identify choke points in the event of a disaster, say a bridge failure that might impact several different companies or government transport. That could then lead to different kinds of non-damage business interruption insurance products. But more importantly, we can envision creating things like empirically estimated resilience scores, potentially resilience indices. That could lead to different kinds of parametric insurance products, and also resilience as a service, which is part of a trend that we see, and you've kind of heard through some of these discussions, where the insurance industry is moving from an understand and cover orientation to risk to a predict and prevent. And the mitigation capability requires a higher level of interoperable modeling capabilities that are currently under research. A second area that's quite appropriate for the current situation we're in now is to be able to model the interaction effect of, say, a disaster such as a typhoon or a hurricane with the pandemic risk. So if you don't have the ability to sort out the details of where people evacuate to, what is the situation in evacuation, can they really socially distance? Do you have the right kind of healthcare preparation? We're now seeing the possibility of modeling the interaction effect of more than one catastrophic risk. And we find that to be quite exciting in terms of giving us new opportunities for understanding resilience, offering tools, and also thinking about how we would write insurance in that context. Now, you've already heard from previous speakers about our alliance with Microsoft, and that's a very powerful catalyst for us to look at some new kinds of capabilities in this context, where we are able to better deploy a variety of data sources. I mean, one of the untapped potential sources of value that companies and governments have, including insurers, is going beyond just the standard structured data, which most people are interested in. And there is also a challenge in curating that data by itself, but it's incorporating unstructured data, which could be text, could be audio, video, that I think is more interesting. And we have a lot of research going on in that space. There's also deployment of technologies that have been around for a few years, such as computer vision, but it's only recently that we've seen a discontinuous improvement, both in speed and classification capability with these tools. And in fact, we have a project underway with something we call Sphere that allows us to look at how we could deploy computer vision both for infrastructure, but also looking at, say, home insurance applications. And that is something that people have talked a lot about. We've seen a lot of pilots, but it's only recently that we think that the technology is at the state that it can be deployed at an enterprise end-to-end scale. And then finally, the ability to incorporate behavioral analytics is another important area of research for us. It's this intersection of digitization with the insights from behavioral economics. Amanda talked about the wearables data. there's a huge behavioral component incorporated there, and particularly when you start scaling up to a company or to an urban ecosystem, understanding that interaction effect, I think, is quite important. And then finally, I do want to emphasize the importance of privacy preservation. It's not talked about enough. The ability to unlock the value of these aggregated data sets in a way that facilitates these machine learning tools really require an extra layer of privacy preservation. We often call this privacy preserving analytics. And I think you will be hearing more about this because the traditional anonymization techniques are just not enough. And with the cyber risks out there, people's concern about sensitive data, and our interest as an insurer to just protect that data, it's very important to deploy the types of solutions that we envision. So in conclusion, you might ask, why is Swiss Re involved in this? I think for us, particularly at the Swiss Re Institute, thinking longer term, this understanding of integrated systems, how they interoperate, and how we can improve data collection and curation to actually get to the point where decision makers have actionable analytics. We think that's critical to the next generation of insurance and the range of services that we can provide in that context. So with that, Urs, I'll hand it back to you.
Thanks a lot, Jeff. And, some fascinating topics. I suspect some of these become near-term realities rather than longer-term science fiction. And so we're very much obviously need to be spending time on these topics. And thanks for walking us through this. Let's go to the final session here, which is open Q&A. We will start with 2 questions that are already posted, and please keep doing the same for anything else that you would like to talk about. We previously talked about Nina's question on the size of the cyber market. There's 2 more, Anthony and Maya, from Ben and from Johannes. I'll read them out, and then you can probably just take them together here. The first one is, how big was the cyber market last year? And then the second one is around the growth of the cyber insurance market. What's happening with the amount of available cyber reinsurance, both from Swiss Re and the reinsurance market overall?
Thanks, Urs, and thanks for your questions, Johannes and Ben. So I'll start with the first one. Last year, we conducted the same analysis. We came up with an estimate of $4.5 billion global cyber insurance premium. So 4.5 for 19, and our estimate for 20 was 5.5. So just over 20% growth year on year was our estimate. So Ben, to your question on the growth of the cyber insurance market and obviously the growth of the cyber reinsurance market as well. Maybe I'll start by taking the Swiss Re focus question. So we're a leading provider of cyber reinsurance capacity. We support our clients in in all geographies in cyber reinsurance. We envisage that we'll continue to deploy capacity in sync with market growth for the time being. So our capacity will grow accordingly. As far as the market is concerned, I'd say if you think about how much of the cyber insurance premium actually flows to reinsurers, it's something like 40%. So it's a big chunk of that premium that flows to reinsurers. And with 20 to 30% annual growth, it's no secret that additional capital will be needed in a mid to long term to support the line of business. And I think what one of the obstacles to that is the accumulation risk of cyber, the accumulation nature of cyber. And I'd like to leave you with a couple of pointers in that respect. So, 2 avenues we're thinking about to support that growth in the long run, and both as a company and as a market. Alternative risk transfer solutions to manage that tail risk. And in addition to that, government backstops, where we think that there are significant exposures to acts by nation states, and that there is a role to play by the states there as well. Hope I answered your question.
Very good. Thanks, Anthony. And then we have a new question from Gareth. This one, we'll address it briefly here. It's not necessarily a tech question, but it's around what's going on in the market there around non-damage BI covers for lockdown pandemic. Is it a product design problem or mis-selling by insurers, brokers? So, look, this is obviously an ongoing, topic, and we certainly cannot comment on any, specific cases, in this forum here. Generally speaking, property policies require physical damage to pay business interruption claims. There are some non-damage business interruption extensions available in the marketplace, but these tend to be sublimited. And then, from a reinsurance contract perspective, there's some defined wordings and coverage on top of the underlying primary policies in these contracts as well. And obviously, it's our fiduciary responsibility to follow what is covered in the insurance and reinsurance contract. So it's a little bit of a broader topic, certainly one that's ongoing. Appreciate the question. It's a little bit beyond the scope of this one, but I hope I gave you a little bit of an insight there. Let's see. Any other questions from anybody? Here we have one from Paul. How much does Swiss Re invest in these technologies presented today? So we invest approximately $300 million per year in our various technologies platforms, the ones that we talked about today, as well as some of the other ones that we didn't go through today. Another data point for you that we have previously disclosed is that as of last November of 2019, we talked about this at our Investor Day, we had invested just shy of $500 million in the iptiQ platform, $475 million, and continue to invest around $40 million in that platform. That's one specific one that we can highlight from today's discussion. So then we go to Oliver again. Again, for Maya and Anthony, prices are rising for all kinds of commercial insurance, just as companies are under financial stress. Will this affect the willingness or ability of companies to buy cyber insurance? Also, are prices rising in the cyber market? Anthony and Maya, please.
So maybe I take the first half of that, and Anthony, you can take the second half. That's okay. So question is, will this affect the willingness or ability of companies to buy cyber insurance? I think what we have seen in terms of the awareness, and we talked about that earlier, that definitely will affect the willingness of companies to buy cyber insurance in a positive way, because companies do understand now much more than ever before that cyber and cyber insurance is an important part that they need in terms of their basic survival, actually. And I think that will have an increasingly or market growing effect on the market, and companies will buy more cyber in future. Will that be easy with the difficult economic situation that we have? Of course not. That is an extra cost, so to speak. Companies will think of that as an extra cost in the first go. But I think here the question is really for companies to make the equation and look at their risk appetite and look at the risk that they can also transfer with this, and actually will hopefully find out, or probably find out, that they probably do a good deed in buying cyber insurance. On the prices, Anthony, I'll hand over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Maya. So Oliver, I'd say, and I'll go by what's publicly available. I think it's been widely reported that cyber insurance prices, and like many other lines, really have gone down over the insurance cycle. For cyber specifically, prices have roughly gone down between not in a straight line, but they've gone down between 2015 and 2019, broadly speaking. From the time of the large retail cyber losses until 2019. I think then the dynamic was really around the broadening of coverage combined with a decrease in rates. I think that the reaction actually on rates for cyber predates the COVID-19 crisis. I think we've seen ransomware attacks really impacting underwriting portfolios. Those losses have been widely reported, and I think that's had an impact on rates. Obviously, then overall dynamics on market hardening due to insurance capital. I think that sits separately. That applies to cyber like it does to every line of business. But those are the cyber specific points, if you like.
Very good. Thank you to both of you for those answers. And then we'll now go to Amanda. And I think this is a question, maybe the last one that we'll be able to take here given the time, but an important one to answer. So how do you refer to the problem that will be created for people that their data are not good? Will they be able to buy life insurance?
Yeah, it's a good question. And yeah, there's always the question, is it only upside? And I guess people have the general sense that if I'm going to engage in a dynamic product, it's because I'm going to manage my health, to the better, not to the worse. No, absolutely not. So the intention here is to expand the availability of insurance and to close the protection gap, not to narrow it. And my comment earlier in terms of the dynamic adjustments that would be made to premiums, for example, based on risk. In order to get such changes approved with regulators, they have to be clear. They also have to be constrained, so within a range, and they have to be transparent to the individual. So as exists today, you will still be able to get insurance. This universe of people able to access insurance, many of those who today are not able to because they have chronic diseases that would, in today's underwriting environment, mean that they're uninsurable. Or they're insurable at a cost that is prohibitive. This would give them the opportunity to gain insurance at a cost that can go down over time if they proactively manage their health. But that cover would still be there for them at the higher rate if they chose not to. And similarly for individuals who are unfortunate and health issues plague them after they've had insurance, this is not intended to suddenly cause an increase in rates based on an event that you had no control over. More the empowerment of individuals to positively impact their health from the activities and the awareness that we see in the market today.
Super. Thank you very much, Amanda. Let me just check here if there's any other questions. None are posted right now. Then if anything else comes to mind, obviously, please do feel free to contact our media relations team here at any time. We'd be glad to answer those questions. With that, I would like to say thank you for joining us. We will send out very shortly the feedback survey, and we'd love to hear from you. So if you could take a moment to fill that out, we'd appreciate it. And of course, if you have anything else, please do reach out. With that, thank you very much and have a nice day. Take care. Bye-bye.